How important is this as an event to you?
So this is indeed a very important event. Every global platform for disaster risk reduction is important because it's the occasion where every 3 years government and also all non-governmental stakeholders come together to exchange views about how we are doing in terms of disaster risk reduction, prevention. This one, I would say, is particularly important because A, we're coming out of COVID. How do we recover from COVID? Are we really going to build back better? This is a crucial question that we need to ask ourselves. So we'll be talking about this. Second, of course, climate emergency has gone nowhere. So we are facing a pandemic and a climate emergency. And also, what is happening in Ukraine is also impacting all of us. So we are facing what we call a multi-crisis. And here, risk governance is extremely important. And when we talk about governance, it's not only about governments, but it's all about everyone, right? So I think that this is the moment when we can at last come together, hybrid, but a lot of people here in person. And the last but important point I would make is that it's going to be 7 years since the Sendai framework was adopted in 2015. Next year is the midpoint. Are we achieving what we think we need to? I don't think so. We're not achieving the SDGs either. So we need to enhance our efforts. And this is also an opportunity to do that.
I'm Gautam Roy from DD News and DD India. Doordarshan is the national broadcaster in India. My question to you is related to extreme weather events like we've been having in India as well. Heat waves, droughts, there's been forest fires, cyclones as well, and they're increasing every year due to climate change effects. Now, what is the UNDRR doing to urge different governments around the world to have, to frame policies and then to, of course, implement them as well and counter these climate change effects?
Well, as you just mentioned, climate change is affecting everybody. 90% of the major disasters of the past 20 years are related to climate change. So, of course, if we cannot deal with this, we cannot lessen the impact. Climate mitigation is very important, but as you have seen since the last COP26 in Glasgow, climate adaptation is now getting a very important, let's say, space in the climate action. We are advocating that 50% of all the climate financing should go to adaptation. And importantly, from the UNDRR perspective, we are advocating so that climate adaptation plans, the NAPs, the National Adaptation Plans of the countries, and the disaster risk reduction strategies of the countries have a synergy between each other. What does it mean? If climate adaptation plans do not look into all other drivers of risk, particularly around vulnerability, around poverty, around gender, then it might work solely in the area of climate action, but it's not going to reduce the impact on the people, and especially the most vulnerable people. So we need to have all disaster risk drivers included in the national adaptation plans. This is what we're advocating. At the same time, all the disaster risk reduction strategies need to not only focus on the historical disasters that a country has been experiencing, because all countries are now experiencing more and more new types of climate-related disasters. The DRR strategies need to also embed the future climate risk. And that is the only way that we can, while climate mitigation goes forward, deal with the climate-related disasters. And as you mentioned, heat waves, droughts, these are only going to be more challenging even while we mitigate.
My name is Jennifer Simwe from Uganda Broadcasting Corporation. My question is, what is your plan or plans for this year's platform?
We need to see action coming out from this global platform. We will talk about our lessons learned. We will talk about our challenges. But importantly, we need to talk about solutions, and solutions that can be scaled up. And when this global platform is over successfully, hopefully on Friday, and when everybody goes back to where they come from, we need to start implementing them from where we are, each one of us, the UN system, the member states, the non-governmental stakeholders, to implement the words that we will hear and we will discuss with each other. That's what we need to hear. Interestingly, 60% of the people who have registered to this global platform are newcomers. I think that's quite striking because previously maybe we were talking among the converted about the importance of prevention, disaster risk reduction. Now with COVID and the climate emergency becoming more and more fierce, there is a new audience, there is a new group that has a keen interest on what does prevention mean, what does disaster risk reduction mean, and hopefully this keen interest will turn into a focus in their action. So that's what we need to see from this global platform. And I think the fact that we are having this in Indonesia, which is such a disaster-prone country, but because of that has built a very resilient society to all kinds of disaster, is in itself a very strong example that we can all take back home.